everybody, we are coming on the air tonight with questions about when the Israel-Hamas war will end and what things are going to look like when it does. The urgent new message the White House is sending to Israel, pushing them to scale back their attacks. What we're hearing from the president. Hallie is live for us in Haifa as diplomatic tensions hit a new high and a grim record death toll is reached. Plus, the jury in Rudy Giuliani's defamation trial heading home with no verdict in just the last hour. We have the latest from court, including why Giuliani didn't take the stand today and how much he may have to pay up. More signs that the economy may come in for that soft landing we've been talking about. People spending more at the stores and online. And we're going to tell you why it might be getting cheaper to make one of the biggest buys of all. Then the East Coast bracing for a major storm. It's got Florida in its sights tonight with heavy rains and riptides expected. Where it's heading in the hours and days ahead. And a major airline promising friendlier skies for its passengers this holiday season. Why the Southwest CEO is saying last year's meltdown will not be repeated. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie, who's on assignment in Israel. And tonight we're seeing diplomatic tensions between Israel and longtime ally, the United States, hitting new highs. As we're just learning, the White House is warning Israel to end its ground-scale attacks in Gaza and transition to a more targeted phase of its war against Hamas. Two U.S. officials familiar with the discussions telling NBC News, here's the president just in the last hour.
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
So that is a new kind of message from President Biden to Israel. Israel faces pressure from many key players in the world stage to form some kind of ceasefire with Hamas. But right now, Israel isn't backing down from its intense military campaign inside Gaza. It's coming at the same time the White House National Security Advisor made a key trip to Israel today. He's going to meet with the Palestinian Authority president in the West Bank tomorrow. And complicating all of this, a senior Israeli diplomat saying today the country, in their words, quote, absolutely will not accept a two-state solution. Lots of questions now about what an end to this war could even look like, or if an end will ever come, as Israel again vows its bloody war with Hamas will last for several more months, saying nothing will stop it from destroying them. At the same time, concerns get bigger about the people caught in the middle of it all, with the limited images we're getting from Gaza showing complete and utter devastation. And yet another complete internet blackout tonight as Israel launches more attacks outside Gaza and the occupied West Bank, raiding camps, carrying out mass arrests. As we're just learning, this year has been the deadliest for people in the West Bank since the UN started recording this back in 2005. And all of this as we're seeing more tension outside the region, with Denmark and Germany arresting suspected Hamas operatives over suspicion they were plotting attacks on Jewish institutions across Europe. We've got team coverage. Megan Fitzgerald for us in London. I want to start, though, with Hallie Jackson, Haifa, Israel. Hallie, good to see you. Thanks for letting me step in on your show tonight. There's sort of a split-screen moment going on here, right? Because we have these diplomatic talks happening, the U.S. sending this stronger message to Israel that we've heard before about its military campaign. But at the same time, we're seeing more intense attacks play out tonight in Gaza.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You've captured it, Yasmin, and we're just so glad to have you holding down the fort back home, of course, in the United States. So listen, what we are seeing tonight is new reporting here about the way that the Biden administration is looking to perhaps not pressure, but direct the Israeli government here in this war, with two officials familiar with the situation, two U.S. officials familiar with these discussions, telling NBC News that the Biden administration has told the Israelis that they want to see a more precise, more targeted phase of the war begin, and less of this sort of intense moment that we're seeing with the bombing of Gaza. Right now, listen, these officials are also stressing and being very sort of careful to make clear that they're not telling Israel like a specific number, right, like a specific exact timetable here. That's one of the things that I think is the question that our team is asking and continues to ask. But it is an indication that the U.S. sees and has some concerns about what is happening in Gaza, as you're showing some of the video there. You heard it from President Biden even just today, saying that he wants Israel to be more careful. And it comes as we're seeing some new reporting as well from multiple sources suggesting that maybe nearly half, 40 to 45% of what is falling on Gaza, the bombs coming down on Gaza, are unguided munitions, a.k.a. dumb bombs here, which are less precise than an alternative kind that are, of course, more expensive there. So all of this is painting a picture, I think, of some international pressure, because remember that the U.S. is largely on a kind of island internationally here. Other nations over the course of the last 2 months, allies of the United States, have gone from abstaining or not supporting calls for an immediate ceasefire to now shifting their positions a little bit. This is indicative of where the broader geopolitical picture seems to be going, but Israel remains defiant here. I mean, you heard one top minister say even just today that the expectation is that this war will last for several more months. And let me tell you, on the ground here, everybody we talk to in the sort of Israeli official world here, politicians, et cetera, says our mission, our stated mission, is to end Hamas, is to eliminate Hamas, and they are showing no signs of backing down from that at this point. Yes.
Hallie, I want to talk about what's happening inside Gaza, right? We're continuing to see the images coming out of Gaza. The death toll is continuing to rise, the highest it has been ever. And then we are seeing the humanitarian crisis continuing amidst it all. What more are you hearing from inside Gaza right now?
Look at it, right? I mean, you look at it. That's what it is. That is what is happening inside Gaza here. Remember, part of the issue is that international journalists largely are not able to get across into Gaza. So what we are seeing are from incredible teams on the ground that are showing some of what's happening there. But you have aid organizations that have gone to visit, and I've talked with representatives from some of them who describe just a nightmare. And in fact, the UN Refugee Agency head described it as a living hell here, the desperation, the despair. One describing people jumping on food trucks. They're so desperate, they're just jumping and swarming these food trucks, pulling the food off of it, eating it immediately because they're so hungry, and preventing that aid from getting any further here. So it is desperation, and the warnings have been sounding now for days that this is getting to a breaking point in Gaza. Not to mention, the weather has been terrible the last few days. Rainy, muddy, things are flooding, people are describing water coming into their tents. Listen to what one person is telling our team. Watch.
Because of the heavy rain, the tent fell and my son's hand was broken. I'm now going to the Kuwaiti hospital to treat him. It is normal for him to be afraid when there's a bombing because the eldest is afraid. I try to distract him with any topic to keep his mind away from the bombing and fear, because children in Gaza in general, not just my son, have become afraid of anything because of the bombing.
And this is, of course, as airstrikes are continuing and the Israeli military continues to point to what they see as gains on the battlefield in Gaza. Yasmin.
A lot happening there, really, over the last 24 hours or so. Hallie, you're going to be back with us in just a moment or so for more coverage from the Israel-Hamas war. For now, my friend, thank you. Want to go to Megan Fitzgerald standing by for us for more on the situation in Europe. Megan, talk us through these arrests, what the suspects are being accused of as well.
So what we know is that officials in Denmark say 3 people were arrested there and 1 in the Netherlands. The prime minister is calling this a situation as serious as it gets. Now, in Germany, state prosecutors there say 4 suspected members of Hamas have been arrested, 1 in the Netherlands, 3 in Berlin. Now, German prosecutors are saying one of the members arrested was searching for an underground stash of weapons in Europe. They believe those weapons were intended to be taken to Berlin to then be used in a potential terrorist attack against Jewish institutions in Europe. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office releasing a statement today. I want to read part of it for you. It says, Hamas strives to expand its operational capabilities around the world and in Europe, in particular, in order to realize its ambitions to hit Israeli, Jewish, and Western targets at any cost. We strengthen our partners in the intelligence and security bodies in Denmark for the successful countermeasures that culminated today with the realization of the arrest and extensive exposure of Hamas infrastructure on European soil. So this, of course, a story that just continues to develop. And Yasmin, one we are absolutely paying a close attention to. All
right, Megan Fitzgerald for us. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. Want to go to Russia now, where President Vladimir Putin is appearing defiant, saying there will be no peace in Ukraine until Russia achieves its military goals as part of his annual marathon news conference in Moscow that he notably, by the way, canceled last year because of the war. And now Putin is raising more questions about where fighting could go next, almost 2 years into this war. It's happening as he claims that Russia and the United States are making progress, as he puts it, in talks to get jailed Americans Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich out. Want to bring in Keir Simmons, who's standing by for us in Moscow to talk more about this. Keir, if you will, let's talk first about the significance of Putin's defiance here and what more he's saying about where Russia is going to take this fighting in Ukraine next.
Well, we don't know where Russia's going to take this fight in Ukraine next, Jasmine, because ultimately, you're right. I mean, Putin was defiant, uncompromising, unapologetic, determined not to withdraw. But what he wants to do and what he's able to do obviously aren't the same. And what he's going to do is going to be really difficult to tell. I mean, what he says is that his goals have not changed one iota since almost 2 years ago when he launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, what he calls his special military operation. He says that he still wants to see the demilitarization of Ukraine. Okay, that means no Western involvement. You can imagine kind of the Ukraine being neutral, and we're so far past that, aren't we? And I think the way to sum this up really is that President Putin says that he's interested in talks, he's prepared to talk, doesn't trust the West, but okay, talks would be fine. But what are the two sides going to talk about? Because we know, of course, that President Zelensky is just as determined that Russia will be pushed back to the 2014 internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. I think ultimately what we saw today, this defiance from President Putin, was also a message that the fighting is likely to continue for some time to come.
So as we're putting the war kind of in a bucket here as well, we are also talking about obviously the Americans that are still being held captive in Moscow, in Russia, in which Russian President Vladimir Putin referred to briefly. What do we know? Are there ongoing conversations? Are there ongoing negotiations? Where are we on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we know there are ongoing talks because we've been told that effectively by the Americans that they made an offer and they say it was rejected. And now today we were told directly by President Putin himself that he's prepared to talk. What he was asked by a New York Times reporter, a pretty brave question, honestly, was whether it is true that that an offer was made by the US and that it was rejected by Russia. He denied that. But at the same time said we have to come to an agreement that suits both sides. And the trouble here is we don't know what offer was made by the Americans and we don't know what demands are being made by the Russians. So where are we? Well, with Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter who is accused of espionage, completely denies it, so does his newspaper. And with Paul Whelan, convicted of espionage and again utterly denies it. With both of them, perhaps there's a possibility of some kind of a trade. Perhaps the Russians are asking for more than that. Clearly, there are talks taking place, but that doesn't mean it's hopeful for their families. But it doesn't mean that we're going to see a result anytime soon.
Keir Simmons, for us. Thank you, Keir. Appreciate it. Right now, everybody, the decision over how much money Rudy Giuliani is going to have to pay for defamatory statements he made about 2 Georgia poll workers after the 2020 election. It's in the hands of a jury, which has gone home tonight without a verdict. And with millions of dollars at stake, Giuliani and his team decided the former mayor would not testify on his own behalf today. That decision is coming after Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss. They provided this emotional testimony about how the lies spread by Giuliani damaged their reputations and upended their lives. Moss saying under oath this: "I now am very anxious. I have these nonstop anxious sweats. I have a lot of dark moments. I no longer go out. I will not be caught out anywhere alone, ever." Ryan Riley is joining us now from outside District Court in Washington to talk more about this. The attorney, Ryan, for Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss as well, they told jurors today the women should be awarded $25 million each. What is the likelihood the jury is headed in that direction?
I think they're going to send a significant statement here, just based on, I think, the case that the plaintiffs put together. But it's hard to figure out, when you have a jury of 8 people landing on that final number is a big decision, and then deciding how much punitive damages are going to be again. And in some ways, it is a little bit like playing with Monopoly money because Rudy Giuliani doesn't have those funds, right? We know he is sort of broke, although he did refuse to cooperate with this ongoing discovery process because we don't really know the exact details. And apparently there's been discussions about him getting a show or having an offer. So he has some sort of income stream, but, his income is obviously really far down from where it was before when he was more well-respected than he is in the year 2023.
I want to talk about the fact that Giuliani said he was going to testify, and then he pulled out last minute. Earlier on in the week, he said, listen, I'm going to testify because they're going to know the whole story about all of these allegations once, in fact, I get my testimony on the record. Then today, turns out he didn't want to do it. What happened?
Yeah, a little bit of a reversal there. Essentially, I think that Giuliani's lawyer and Giuliani are on very separate pages here because, Rudy Giuliani still seems to believe a lot of these conspiracy theories that he initially spread about these two. He said he was going to tell the truth, and the truth, quote unquote, that he was talking about there were these lies about the election workers. So obviously, if he had got on the stand and said, actually, everything I said is true and I did nothing wrong, that was going to go pretty disastrously for him. His lawyer, on the other hand, took a much different tone. In fact, didn't question yesterday Ruby Freeman after she gave that emotional testimony, and then said today that they weren't putting Rudy on the stand because he claimed they didn't want to put the women through anything longer, when in reality, I think Rudy getting on the stand probably would have only upped the damages that they ended up returning here, Yasmin.
Ryan Riley for us. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right, let's get some good Christmas news in, shall we? The Dow set another record today, ending the trading day up more than 150 points with the second straight day of gains thanks to strong economic news. I know everyone is going to want to hear this. Mortgage rates, they're now under 7% for the first time since August, steadily dropping for 7 weeks straight. And while you may not be in the market for a new home this Christmas or this holiday season, easing mortgage rates, they're a good thing. And shoppers, they're leaning into this holiday season. They're spending. Retail sales up in November, 0.3%, turning around an October decline and exceeding economists' expectations. The good economic news, it's coming as inflation is easing, the Fed decision to hold interest rates, and the expectation of rate drops next year. I want to bring in Brian Chung to talk more about this. You and I have been on kind of this rigmarole for the past year or so, talking about will he, won't he, what's he going to do, what's going on with the economy, are we going to avoid a recession, are we not going to avoid a recession? A couple months ago, we were talking about, yes, a recession is coming. Now it looks like this could have been the soft landing Jerome Powell had been talking about for quite some time, right?
Which, by the way, it's a funny news item. Like yesterday when the Federal Reserve didn't do anything, the news is that they didn't do anything, which, by the way, was expected. But what new came out of that meeting was the fact that they had, for the first time since they began raising rates, then started to talk about the possibility of cutting interest rates. The Federal Reserve itself baking in expectations for the possibility of 3 interest rate cuts over the course of 2024. That's going to be welcome news for those that are continuing to watch mortgage rates fall, because maybe that points to rates falling even further. Credit card rates could come down from the highs that we're seeing right now. But broadly speaking, what's more important is that the Federal Reserve, which has been trying to steer us out of this high inflation, sees the path to that soft landing, which again is the Federal Reserve getting inflation down without economic catastrophe, like a rising unemployment rate, which, by the way, Yasmin, has really been hovering near over 50-year lows. Which is really
I wonder, though, because you got consumers, they're spending money. They're spending money this holiday season. They haven't really stopped spending money this entire time. But they're not necessarily saying the economy is doing well. They're happy with the direction of the economy. At what point do you feel as if people are actually going to start to feel this good economic news?
Yeah, and there could be a lag there, right? I mean, we talk about the fact that there's been basically a 2-year period post-pandemic of inflation outpacing wage growth. So, okay, you were making more money, but guess what? Everything out the store was getting more expensive. So what's happened is that as of earlier this year, that dynamic has switched. So wage growth is now outpacing. It's about 4%, the rate of inflation, which is about 3.2%.
So we're not at 2 yet.
We're not at 2 yet. But again, it's going to take a few months for Americans to feel that. But we got retail sales today showing that people did go out and spend in November. Yes, it was Black Friday. A lot of people bought clothing. They went out and drank, and they went out to eat as well. But, look, there are other things that are happening, too. People are not buying electronics like they did in the heyday 10 years ago when people were door busting to get TVs. So people are pulling back. They're a little choosier, especially on the types of discounts they're buying.
Why do you think the Fed is being so aggressive about possible rate cuts over the next year, more aggressive than even the markets thought they were going to be?
Yeah, well, I think it's because the Federal Reserve is looking at the situation right now and going, well, we have to remember that interest rates, even if they're not cutting them right now, they're still well above where they historically have been, especially over the post-financial crisis era. So for that reason, the Federal Reserve goes, okay, well, we can even cut 3 times, and we would still be what would be considered above a restrictive territory where we can still get inflation down. Again, that last mile, getting from 3% where we are now to their target of 2% is going to be the hardest, is what economists argue. If they keep those interest rates relatively elevated at a historical level, maybe they can accomplish that.
When could we get interest rates back to normal?
Well, the Federal Reserve says it might still take about 2 years.
Yeah.
Again, that's to get to that inflation target of 2%. But again, the days of that 9% inflation rate we were feeling in the summer of last year, the Fed is projecting are well past.
What's the projection for interest rates then? Like 3%, 3.5%? Is that where they want to get to? I mean, 2.5, 2.75, those were kind of those historic lows, right?
Yeah, we're at
pandemic.
5.25, 5.5 right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 3%, they'd have to get a lot more aggressive on those interest rate cuts. Again, they're projecting 3 over the course of next year.
Got it.
That would take us to around 4 and 3/4.
All right, Brian Chung bringing us happy Christmas news. news, I guess,
Yeah.
ahead of the holidays. Thank you. All right, tonight, everybody, Florida is bracing for a tropical-like storm to slam the state before moving up the entire eastern seaboard this weekend, bringing lots and lots of rain. And you know what comes with rain? Flooding as well. Look at these maps. The rain is only going to get worse over the next couple of days. By Sunday, much of Florida is going to be dealing with around 1 to 2 inches of rain and up to 6 or 7 in some places. It's already creating some concerns today. There's a high risk of rip currents. People at beaches are advised to swim near lifeguards. There's also dangerous marine conditions, especially for smaller boats and these major waves. Plus, you got strong winds. Could bring down some trees as well. Want to bring in with that rain
you're Debbie
and with
Downer.
that wind.
Gee whiz.
NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns, who's got all the good news for us.
Nothing like the holiday spirit, like a big rainstorm, you know? Just 12 days of Christmas, get like the rubber duckies. Yeah, unfortunately, Yasmin, this storm is going to be similar to the one last week. We're crossing our fingers we don't get the severe weather, though, with like the tornadoes and the devastation. This, I hope, and looks like more of an inconvenience for a lot of us with holiday plans, holiday parties, shopping, you get it, whatever, any outdoor activities are just not going to be fun where the storm hits. So the storm currently, actually, is coming out of Colorado. We got rain in Oklahoma, and then there's this whole plume of clouds and moisture in the Gulf. Those two are going to combine for our storm as we go into Saturday. So even tomorrow is not that bad in Florida. So right now, we just got some heavy rain around Key Largo, and temperatures are mild. It's very windy in Florida. It's almost like a tropical storm is at the coast. Winds are gusting up to 41 miles per hour, so not exactly enjoyable to be on the beach or walking your dog or anything like that, but at least it hasn't been pouring yet. And if you're in the Miami area, here's kind of the timing of it. Rain and wind on Friday. Saturday's the day that looks like just tropical downpours. It'll feel like a tropical storm is around. Sunday, early rain. Then it clears out. The afternoon actually may be fine. The sun could come out, and then we're just fine by Monday, but even by Miami standards, 59, we'll probably get some complaints. So here's the timing of it. As we look at 5 p.m. Friday, mostly just South Florida. But look what happens as we go throughout the night on Saturday, and then during the day Saturday, our whole map fills in here like a kid was coloring. This is all heavy rain and thunderstorms, Yasmin. So.
I tell you, Bill, I've always wanted to be a weather girl, and this is my dream come true. But I want you to talk us through.
I can train you. It wouldn't take long.
That's going to take a long time. Talk us through the East Coast. We're up here in New York City, right? Because this thing is moving up all the way to the East Coast from Florida. Yeah, that's
they want to know when's it heading in our general direction. So, okay, so
when do we need to hunker
let's
down?
fast forward. So let's get into, this is going to be on Sunday at 1 p.m. So anywhere you see the green is light rain moving in. So there's where Yasmin is right now. Me too. And then light rain all the way from Virginia northwards. The really heavy stuff, all our friends down in, say, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, heading into the Wilmington area, Morehead City. Sunday, it's going to feel like a tropical storm is coming through. It's going to be winds gusts up to 50 miles per hour, maybe some minor coastal flooding. So that's the nasty stuff. And then by the time we get to 6 p.m. Sunday, it heads north. And then the next complaint box getting full is going to be Monday morning. Everyone heading to work and heading to school. It is going to be torrential rain all the way through the Northeast, I-95 corridor, gusty winds along with this. So be prepared Monday morning. If you have any travel plans, airports.
Yeah. What do you think?
Reschedule if you can.
I think a lot of people have some travel plans coming up. None of this is going to turn into snow?
None.
Wow.
It's all rain. Even like northern New
like
England, it's all rain.
Yeah. Bill Cairns.
Well, where?
Thanks so much. Thanks for training me. Good to see you as well. All right, come on, everybody. Southwest CEO says the massive meltdown it had last year is not going to happen again. It's new policies to avoid travel nightmares. Plus, a wild sight in New Jersey today, a bull causing commute chaos. All caught on video. Stay with us. All right, tonight, the CEO of Southwest Airlines reassuring nervous customers ahead of what's projected to be a record holiday season for air travel. Listen to what he said on CNBC earlier today.
We are ready. We are ready for winter. We've already had snow, big snow in Denver, Chicago, and we performed extraordinarily well.
You're wondering, why does he think Americans need some reassuring? Probably on account of the millions of passengers that his company left stranded last December. You remember these scenes, people sleeping in airports for days, disappearing baggage. Their holidays ruined. When it was all over, Southwest had canceled nearly 17,000 flights and affected 2 million of its passengers. The airline initially blamed it on this massive winter storm that brought freezing temps, tons of snow to several parts of the country. But then later on, they admitted that a lot of the chaos actually had to do with a super outdated scheduling system. Southwest will need to be ready this year. AAA projecting that the 2023 holiday season is going to be the busiest ever for air travel. I want to bring in Emily Ikeda, who's following this for us. So they're making promises. They're ready. They're ready to go. Obviously, just playing the CEO's sound there. How are they going to keep this promise?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people are paying close attention to because we all remember the chaos from last year.
Yeah.
The CEO touting earlier today that you look at something like Thanksgiving of this year, they had snow in parts of the country, and he says that there were no cancellations system-wide. So he's touting that number earlier today. We know that airlines and airports, they have been preparing for months for this unprecedented travel season, this upcoming Christmas time. If you look at some of the specific changes that Southwest we have for you, their action plan, what they're calling it, improving winter operations. So that means like more weather equipment, think de-icing. They're adding more staff when there's extreme cold. Also something they called enhanced collaboration that deals with improving their scheduling systems, and then operational investments, upgrades to crew scheduling software, also increased phone system call capacity. So I just spoke with someone who says they're not taking any chances. They're going to be driving more than 20 hours to their destination. Take a listen here.
You're driving how long just to avoid flying?
23 hours. Because of a meltdown inside of an airline, you potentially lose, not only a vacation, but thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's not worth it. It's not worth the stress at the holidays.
So that's the degree of stress that he and his family faced last year.
It's really stressful to be left behind, to be stuck in an airport, to lose your baggages, to not know where you're going and when you're going to get there. So I understand it, but 23 hours, that is commitment there.
Commitment, yeah.
By the way, it's not just Southwest Airlines, it's other airlines as well, and it's other means of travel.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're heading out the door, you're getting ready to go on vacation for this holiday season, how do you prepare?
Yeah, so keep in mind the vast majority of travelers are actually getting behind the wheel. They're getting in the car. Take a look at some of the numbers here. More than 100 million people are going by car. They also have 7.5 million people expected to travel by air. That is a record, by the way, according to AAA. And then other people will take other modes of transportation, train, for instance, that 4 million people there. And then, so if you are one of the many, many tens of million people getting in the car, take a look. This is how much congestion can surge. More than 50%, Los Angeles to Bakersfield. Keep in mind, if you're among the travelers on the road, San Francisco to Sacramento, you can see an increase of 73% on the roadway. That's why we always say pack your patience. I know it's something we repeat often, but it's because you're going to be sitting in lines like this. But going back to the airline point, if you're going to be flying, a quick tip, download the airline's app because that's a really good way to get a faster mode of communication and if to quickly rebook your trip if there's a flight that's canceled.
And if you have kids, bring lots of snacks.
Snacks, entertainment.
Water, entertainment, games. Load up those iPads, load up those iPhones that you have.
Yep, absolutely.
It's occupied. Emily, Kata, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, want to get you over to the 5 things that our team thinks that you should know about tonight. We got number 1, a British teenager who disappeared 6 years ago has been found in southern France after a truck driver spotted him hitchhiking, according to police. The boy, Alex Batty, went missing when he was 11 years old during a family trip to Spain. Police say his mother and grandfather are wanted in connection with his disappearance. Number 2, the WHO now urging governments worldwide to ban all flavored vapes, saying they could drive nicotine addiction amongst non-smokers. The agency is saying now, more 13 to 15-year-olds are using vapes than adults. Number 3, U.S. troops may see their biggest pay raise in over 2 decades thanks to a defense bill just approved by Congress. It would raise their salaries by over 5%. The bill now heads to President Biden to sign into law. We got number 4 for you. General Motors' self-driving business Cruise is laying off 24% of its workforce. It comes one day after 9 key leaders were let go for the company's response to an October incident where a pedestrian was dragged 20 feet by one of their self-driving cars. A Cruise spokesperson says the company will focus on more deliberate commercialization plans. Number 5, 6 jerseys worn by soccer star Lionel Messi during his World Cup run last year were just sold for a measly $7.8 million at auction, Sotheby's saying today. The set includes the one Messi wore in his winning World Cup match. It's the second most valuable jersey set auctioned off ever. When we come back, how hunters helped rescue a 72-year-old woman missing for days in an Idaho canyon. That's in the local. Plus, Hallie joins us again live from Haifa, speaking with our correspondents on the ground there about covering the Israel-Hamas war these past couple of months, their reflections, and our backstory tonight. It is time to get the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into this bigger picture. And tonight, our reporters on the ground in the Middle East, some of them since the Israel-Hamas war started, sitting down with each other in a rare on-camera meetup, giving us an inside look into what it looks like to cover this war. Hallie is back with us now from Israel to talk more about this. This is fascinating. A lot of folks don't necessarily know what goes into covering conflict zones like this, Hallie, so I'm so thankful that you got this inside look. Walk us through it.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. And you know this segment, right? It's something that we do a lot on the show. It's specifically a behind-the-scenes look. You said it, at how a story comes together. And so we thought, listen, we have these war correspondents who have been covering this now for months, who have covered a lot of various wars and a lot of various places here. And we thought, let's have a conversation to just look at what that's like, how we are trying to tell those stories and bring those stories to a wider audience.
It started off very intense. It's remained very intense. Yeah. It's been a human grind emotionally since the beginning. It started with a lot of human suffering up close that we could see, where we could go to these kibbutzim, we could meet the people who had lost loved ones, who had people kidnapped. And there's still so much suffering inside Israel, but now a lot of the suffering concentrated in Gaza. We're seeing it from afar.
I think the real challenge for us is to tell the Gaza story without being inside of Gaza unilaterally. So you can go on IDF embeds. You did one or two even, I think. But that's obviously imperfect in the sense that you have escorts with you all the time. At some point, I hope that we're going to be able to get in unilaterally, independently, and report, because the courageous teams on the ground who are sending us the material, without them, we couldn't tell any of the story. So at least we're getting something, but we're not getting as much of the picture as we'd like. And that's a huge challenge, because ultimately, especially TV reporting, all reporting, but TV reporting is about face-to-face access. Yeah. And you don't get the story the same way over Zoom. You just don't.
And it's even hard to do the Zooms, for example, because the comms have deteriorated so much there. So how are you communicating with people in Gaza? Explain that to an audience back home. Everybody's texting, everybody picks up the phone, and it's an instant connection. That's not the case here.
You hear from people so intermittently. They text you, you text them back straight away, and then it's 3 days of silence. And you wonder, are they still alive? What's happened to them? And the reality, and a lot of times, they can't get connection, you know? You have to be super aware that as much as you want to hear everything from these people, you know, they're trying to keep their families alive, they're trying to find food.
I mean, we're seeing that with the other hat that I wear back home in Washington, this daylight here, this distance between the U.S., this very obviously close and strong ally of Israel, and what they want to see in what's next from Gaza. You referenced other conflicts you've covered, Hallie. You've covered this region for decades. Explain that. What does feel different now than then?
Well, I think the extent of the damage, the displacement of 90% of the population. This is not a territory that is going to be habitable after this. It's already not habitable. When the war ends, and it will end, are the conditions that led to this conflict going to change?
One of the things that has struck me being here just for a very short period of time is how much the families of people who are still being held in captivity want to talk.
Yeah, it's so interesting. They feel like they need to humanize their loved ones. They don't want the world to forget about these now 135 or so people who are still in Gaza. But it's also just, it's somewhere for people to put their energy. They can't help their mothers, brothers, sisters who are inside Gaza. They can't go rescue them. What can they do? They can talk, and they can talk, and they can sit down with journalists, and they can answer painful questions.
The hardest thing for me to do as a journalist is speak to the family member of someone who's died. We're in kind of emergency, kind of ER room mode when we're covering the story, but then we have those quiet moments when we're actually screening the footage. And that sometimes you can really cry and break down, because this is the worst nightmare that any of us can imagine living through, and you are time and again asking it of someone else to share. And I worry about myself when I'm in autopilot and I don't cry. I worry about myself. I check myself. Like, why haven't I cried in 2 weeks? Many of my friends are foreign reporters and do the same job that I do. One of my well-known female correspondent friends said, I haven't cried yet, and it's been a month. And we kind of wonder what's going on.
Is there a story or an interview that you can't shake? Is there something that is the thing that you're thinking about in those quiet moments at night when you're not working?
There is a little boy who was kidnapped, was taken into Gaza. His name is Ohad Mundar. He was 8 years old when he was kidnapped. He turned 9 in captivity. And we sat down with his cousin, and the cousin mentioned that Ohad's father was in agony, not knowing whether his son had his glasses or not, because this little boy can't see without his glasses. And the thought of this little kid in those tunnels, afraid, not able to see. And Ohad came out on one of the first days, and he had his glasses.
It's funny because it's sometimes the most random detail that reminds you of the humanity. Eventually, not you, but eventually I'm going to go to the airport, I'm going to hop on a flight, and I'm going to go to my family, and it's going to be Christmas, and we're going to, have a nice meal and whatever. And you're going to feel this tremendous guilt that you left and the people behind remained. And that's something very difficult to explain. My brain is in the suffering of the people, and I feel guilty.
You're here, you're based here, and so when October 7th happened, you were what, at home asleep?
I was at home asleep, woke up, there's the dull thuds of rockets overhead, there's the sirens going off. I texted 2 of our bosses and I said, hey, sorry for the early morning text. There's what looks like a surprise attack, and we got to this checkpoint on one of the main highways. If you imagine I-95 or something, and there's just soldiers improvising a checkpoint using their cars. So we set up and we started doing our first live shots from one of these checkpoints, and the soldiers were so amped, they were so panicked, I would say, and they were dragging anyone who looked Palestinian out of their cars and putting them on the road. And I really thought, someone is going to get killed here in the back of our live shot. This might play out on, we were doing specials. We interrupted this program, and I just thought anything could happen here. And it was totally out of control then, and it stayed totally out of control for a long time after that.
The core of our audience at NBC News is based in the United States. How do you think about that as you're out reporting your stories through the course of the stories that you're telling?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, right? Thousands of miles away, 7 time zones, completely different context. But you do try to think about people in the U.S. and what are the reference points that are going to make sense, what needs to be explained, what's self-evident. The humanity kind of gets you through. There's a woman who's still in Gaza. She's called Noa Argamani, and everyone, even if they don't know her name, they'll know her face. She's the woman who was on the back of the motorcycle being taken away from the festival. We interviewed her father pretty early in the war. He's speaking in Hebrew, and he's speaking, and you don't need any subtitles. You know exactly what this man is saying. His daughter has just been kidnapped. It's the same when there's a mother in Gaza who is sifting with her bare hands through the rubble, trying to find her daughter's notebook because her daughter was killed in an Israeli airstrike, and the notebook is the only thing she can think of, that's sort of a reminder of her daughter's short life. That stuff cuts through.
Raf and Hala just doing such incredible work here along with the rest of our team, Richard Engel and others who've been covering the story. And obviously, Yasmin, the focus is so much beyond us. It's what the story is. It's what we're covering here, which is this war now. But given that people who watch this show know that we do this segment with other correspondents, I think you've done it with us, we thought it was an opportunity to share some of those just sort of incredibly compelling moments from those two. And we're just so grateful to them for giving up a piece of their day, a short piece of their day to talk to us.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily have insight into what goes into conflict reporting like that and kind of what goes through all of our heads when we're having to report on those things and what you face. One of the things that really resonated with me was in talking about, and I'm sure for you, Hallie, as well, because, you're a parachuter, right? You're here mostly, but you parachuted in for a few weeks, and then you're going to leave, and you're going to go back to your beautiful family and celebrate the holidays with them, which I know you're very excited to do. But kind of knowing what you're leaving behind and what people in both Israel and Gaza face in this never-ending, what seems to be never-ending war.
And it's a particularly poignant time because think about what's happening right now. Here in Israel, everywhere, it's Hanukkah. Christmas is coming up, and you hear that invoked, right? You hear this moment that is supposed to be a celebration of family and friends and life and peace and miracles come up as we talk about you know, what's happening with these hostage families, the people whose loved ones have been held captive by Hamas. It comes up when you're looking at the situation and you're talking to people about what's happening in Gaza here. And I just think about, there's a woman who was at the White House just recently back home in Washington, whose loved one is being believed to be held, still unaccounted for. And she talked about wanting a Christmas miracle, sort of hoping and praying for a Christmas miracle here. So the time too, it's a somber time for obvious reasons. And I think there is a real desire, especially when it comes to, for example, those hostage family members, a desperation to get something done. And I think when you look at what's happening in Gaza, absolute despair that there's not more from what we hear from people there that's being done for them too. Yasmin.
Hallie, thank you. Appreciate it. So NBC covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it's tough to read, to watch, or to listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local, out of our Northeast Bureau. A Long Island couple who appeared on the Bravo show Below Deck pleading not guilty today in a prescription drug scheme. The couple, a doctor and his wife, accused of stealing the identities of cast members to write fake prescriptions for oxycodone. Investigators did not say whether the couple were using, reselling the drugs, or both. Then out of our Western Bureau, 2 hunters in Idaho saved a 72-year-old woman's life after they found her crashed car halfway down a cliff. They then called police, who found her alive further down the cliff 4 days after she was reported missing. The woman is reportedly recovering at a hospital with her family. In the Northeast Bureau, look at this. A bull got loose in New Jersey's largest city and found its way onto the train tracks. Wonder where it was headed. It held up train traffic between New Jersey and New York for almost an hour. Police eventually caught the bull and brought it to an animal sanctuary, but they don't know how it came loose or where it came from. Officials say nobody was hurt. In just the next couple of minutes, everybody, baseball history is being made as generational talent and earner of the largest contract in sports history, Shohei Ohtani, is officially introduced as a Los Angeles Dodger, I should say. Hundreds of members of the media, Dodgers staff, family alike, friends are going to take over Dodger Stadium for the event, the biggest sports media spectacle in recent memory. And you've probably heard why. A record-breaking, get this, $700 million contract only made more unbelievable by the news a few days ago that Ohtani will defer almost all of it, everything, but $2 million per year until the contract is up 10 years from now. NBC's Dana Griffin is following this for us from L.A. These signings / introductions, they happen all the time in every major sport. This one, though, it's going to set itself apart.
Absolutely. I mean, this is history making, the richest sports contract, $700 million over 10 years. And even with this deferred deal, Shohei is going to get $2 million a year. And, you know, we've heard that he rakes in about $50 million in endorsement deals, so he's doing just fine. We know that he has been such a sought-after player since he was in high school playing in Japan. Even the MLB changed the rules to accommodate him so that he could be on the field more as a pitcher and a hitter. Some even comparing him to Babe Ruth, saying that he is outpacing Babe Ruth, and we've got the stats to back it up. Take a look. For home runs and batting, Ohtani, 171 to Babe Ruth's 165. Strikeouts and pitching, 608 for Ohtani, 488 for Babe Ruth. Now, Ohtani is from Japan, and so some people may have not heard of him, but Dodgers Nation reporter and editor J.P. Hornstra explains his star power. Listen.
I would probably compare him to like some combination of LeBron James and Taylor Swift. I think the pairing of the Ohtani brand and the Los Angeles Dodgers brand is going to make him the kind of household name that certainly when these 10 years are up, even later, people are going to remember his name and they're going to want to tell their kids, I saw that guy playing baseball.
Now, Ohtani just had surgery on his elbow a few months ago, so he'll return next year as a hitter, but we likely won't see him pitching, Yasmin, until 2025.
LeBron and Taylor, goat and goat, have a baby, I guess, and you got Shohei Ohtani. Amazing. Like, I mean, that is unbelievable. You talk about kind of the good news, right, for Dodgers fans. They're getting this superstar, this future Hall of Famer. But when it comes to seeing him play, you talk about the timeline. That bad news there.
Yeah, if you're looking for a ticket, be ready to shell out some extra bucks. Take a look at the resale value for some of the tickets. Before he was even talked about going to the Dodgers, ticket prices, $190. Yasmin, that's now up 133% at $442. So right now the average ticket is selling for about was selling for about $580. Now about $1,200. And the most expensive ticket to watch this guy play is going for $9,628 for the Dugout Club. So we're going to hear from Dodgers. We're going to hear from this player in about 15 minutes at this press conference. So it's definitely going to be a spectacle.
So if you're, by the way, a Dodgers season ticket holder, you're probably reselling a heck of a lot of your tickets.
Yes.
Sure, you want to see him play, but you also want to make some money. Dana Griffin, thank you. Appreciate it. Coming up, new data showing an experimental cancer vaccine, when used with another therapy, it cuts the risks of deadly skin cancer returning in half. How it works and when it might actually be available. That's coming up next. Some hope tonight in the fight against skin cancer. New data showing that an experimental vaccine is cutting the risk of death and recurrence when it's used in combination with another therapeutic treatment. It is a vaccine the companies, the Moderna and Merck, they're working on that specifically targets melanoma, which is responsible for the majority of skin cancer deaths. In the United States, over 97,000 people are expected to be diagnosed with melanoma this year. And out of that number, almost 8,000 will likely die. Moderna's CEO saying the vaccine could get launched, I should say, in some countries as early as 2025. Dr. John Torres is joining me now with more on this. This is incredible when this actually gets out into the open market. It's not just a vaccine that you get and the cancer goes away. It's kind of part of, Dr. Torres, this process, and it goes hand in hand with a treatment that Merck also created. Talk us through how this works.
And that's exactly right, Yasmin. It's getting close to that holy grail of vaccines where you get a vaccine and it prevents getting any type of cancer. In this case, it doesn't prevent the cancer, but it helps treat it after somebody develops cancer, and they surgically remove what they can. Right now, they use a drug called Keytruda to try and help prevent that cancer from coming back. What they did here, Merck and Moderna, is they added a second vaccine here, the vaccine being this one here, that can work in addition with Keytruda to keep it from coming back. And you look at the numbers here, they're fantastic. It can cut the risk of death or recurrence by 49% in these people after 3 years of being on it compared to just being on that Keytruda, and it can reduce the risk of melanoma spreading to other parts of the body by 62%. What it's doing is using immunotherapy. The Keytruda exposes the body to the tumor, and then they look at this tumor. They actually get the tumor. They go ahead and personalize it. They type it to the vaccine, and then they give the vaccine to the patient and allow their immune system to attack the tumor and hopefully keep it from ever coming back.
I want to talk about the timeline if we can here. It's still at least a year or so away, probably more than that. The FDA giving Merck, Moderna's trial, this expedited timeline so they can get everything reviewed faster than it typically would. What needs to happen between now and when people who really need this can start using it?
So right now they've done the test in 157 patients, and those are the numbers you saw there in those 157 patients. And it's possible they could get conditional approval based on that, because this is something that is very much needed and has been needed for centuries. What they're going to do is they're also going to look now at a phase 3 trial of 1,000 patients and just confirm the data they have, which could further substantiate getting more of an approval on this from the FDA. And so, like you said, 2025 is about the time they might be getting that early approval, hopefully even more or even earlier, but time will tell what happens there.
So when we get one, we want more, right? And you know, everybody has been affected when it comes to cancer, and everybody wants a solution to it because it is just so awful to so many families in this country and around the world. Looking at the screen here for folks, it kills an estimated 609,000 this year alone, expected, I should say. When we talk about all of these kind of new hopes with vaccines like the one that we are talking about, as we see more and more of these experimental trials, could vaccines become the answer to treating most cancers?
And Yasmin, I would say it could become one of the cancers to treating, one of the treatments for cancer that could be successful. Again, the holy grail is to be able to do something to prevent cancer from coming in the first place. And what a lot of agencies are looking at, a lot of these different pharmaceutical companies, is using it in addition to what's called a liquid biopsy, so they can detect these small cells, and then they can go ahead and create a vaccine that can personalize to the cancer you have. And you can see a list there of the things that have been approved so far, therapeutics for these cancer vaccines. They're looking at other ones as well.
Wow.
And hopefully, as time goes on, they're going to use this mRNA technology that we have from the pandemic to go ahead and push this even further forward, Yasmin.
Dr. John Torres, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Still to come, everybody. Fake reviews are everywhere online. We're breaking down how to spot scammers while you finish holiday shopping. That's coming up next. All right, let me guess, everybody. You're doing some online shopping this season. You're probably doing it right now while you're watching. I do it all the time, multitasking. And since all of those options when you search at new toaster are a bit overwhelming, you've probably also looked at customer reviews to help you choose. One survey found 98% of U.S. read reviews before choosing a local business. But other researchers found fake reviews are a bigger problem than ever. So who do you trust? Well, in tonight's breakdown, we trust NBC's Noah Pransky for a few tips on how not to get fooled by fakes.
From stocking stuffers to the local restaurant around the corner, fake reviews are everywhere. Nearly half of every critique and rating you see online.
There are organized fraud rings out there that are trying to create fake reviews all the time.
Organized crime and fake reviews. Bet you didn't have those two items together on your holiday bingo card.
The scammers are just getting more and more sophisticated.
John Breo with the National Consumers League is sort of the Paul Revere of fake reviews, sounding alarms about bad actors illegally trying to boost sales of products and services, as well as those trying to illegally hurt a competitor's product or service. And yeah, the FTC considers posting a fake review illegal, and they're even planning to crack down on offenders next year. So how do you avoid this holiday season from getting suckered into a subpar subwoofer or sub sandwich? 5 tips. Number 1, don't just rely on star ratings. Read the text of reviews, because some scammers don't take the time to add any. Especially read more of those nuanced 2, 3, and 4-star reviews. Number 2, check out the reviews on other sites too to see if you're getting the full picture. Even better, read product and restaurant reviews from established sources. Number 3, look for these red flags in online reviews. Lots of reviews published in a very short amount of time, lots of reviews published for a very new product, lots of short 1 or 2 word reviews, or lots of users posting with little history of posting anything else. Tip 4, and this is a big one, bookmark a review checker. These are sites where you can plug in the URL of an item you might be purchasing, and they'll analyze hundreds, even thousands of reviews to tell you if what you're looking at is likely real. And tip number 5, you probably shouldn't trust anything you see from an influencer online. There's a good chance that testimonial is bought and paid for.
Be especially wary of reviews you see on social media. It really is the Wild West when it comes to those reviews. Nobody is really monitoring them with any degree of security, so take those with a grain of salt.
Online reviews are still a great way to find great products, and hopefully now you can better cut through the clutter to avoid that next holiday disappointment.
And Noah is joining us now. Noah, what is an online retailer's responsibility when it comes to these fake reviews?
Thanks to Section 230 of the Federal Code, there is no responsibility basically whatsoever. You're not responsible for what a user posts on your site, but the integrity in the ratings is kind of integral to the Amazon, Walmart, retail business. So Amazon, for instance, told us they remove hundreds of millions of fake reviews a year. They use technology and AI to sort them out. But it's kind of whack-a-mole, you know, you knock a few of them out of there, a few more pop up. They're doing the best they can, but at the end of the day, some of it does fall on us too.
Noah Pransky, thank you. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now. Hey, everybody, we are coming on the air tonight with questions about when the Israel-Hamas war will end and what things are going to look like when it does. The urgent new message the White House is sending to Israel. pushing them to scale back their attacks. What we're hearing from the president, Hallie is live for us in Haifa, as diplomatic tensions hit a new high and a grim record death toll is reached. Plus, the jury in Rudy Giuliani's defamation trial heading home with no verdict in just the last hour. We have the latest from court, including why Giuliani didn't take the stand today and how much he may have to pay up. More signs that the economy may come in for that soft landing we've been talking about. People spending more at the stores and online. And we're going to tell you why it might be getting cheaper to make one of the biggest buys of all. Then the East Coast bracing for a major storm. It's got Florida in its sights tonight with heavy rains and riptides expected. Where it's heading in the hours and days ahead. And a major airline promising friendlier skies for its passengers this holiday season. Why the Southwest CEO is saying last year's meltdown will not be repeated. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie, who's on assignment in Israel. And tonight we're seeing diplomatic tensions between Israel and longtime ally, the United States, hitting new highs. As we're just learning, the White House is warning Israel to end its ground-scale attacks in Gaza and transition to a more targeted phase of its war against Hamas. Two U.S. officials familiar with the discussions telling NBC News, here's the president just in the last hour.
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
So that is a new kind of message from President Biden to Israel. Israel faces pressure from many key players in the world stage to form some kind of ceasefire with Hamas. But right now, Israel isn't backing down from its intense military campaign inside Gaza. It's coming at the same time the White House National Security Advisor made a key trip to Israel today. He's going to meet with the Palestinian Authority president in the West Bank tomorrow. And complicating all of this, a senior Israeli diplomat saying today the country, in their words, quote, absolutely will not accept a two-state solution. Lots of questions now about what an end to this war could even look like, or if an end will ever come, as Israel again vows its bloody war with Hamas will last for several more months, saying nothing will stop it from destroying them. At the same time, concerns get bigger about the people caught in the middle of it all, with the limited images we're getting in from Gaza showing complete and utter devastation. And yet another complete internet blackout tonight as Israel launches more attacks outside Gaza and the occupied West Bank, raiding camps, carrying out mass arrests. As we're just learning, this year has been the deadliest for people in the West Bank since the UN started recording this back in 2005. And all of this as we're seeing more tension outside the region, with Denmark and Germany arresting suspected Hamas operatives over suspicion they were plotting attacks on Jewish institutions across Europe. We've got team coverage. Megan Fitzgerald for us in London. I want to start, though, with Hallie Jackson, Haifa, Israel. Hallie, good to talk to you once again. I want to start off with this divide that we're seeing emerge between the United States and Israel tonight, as we're learning about a key U.S. official meeting with the Palestinian Authority president tomorrow.
Yeah, how about that? National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan set to travel to the West Bank tomorrow to speak with the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, in what is going to be another significant meeting in a couple of days that have been full of them. And it comes, Yasmin, as we are just now getting the first look, the first official look, I should say, from the White House's side, from the Biden administration's side, at how those meetings went. I want to read to you kind of a couple of key lines here from this, because it's interesting. They say that Jake Sullivan was briefed in detail on the state of the military campaign in Gaza, including setting conditions for shifts over time from high-intensity clearing operations to lower-intensity surgical operations against Hamas remnants. Let's break down what those words mean, right? That is, in some ways, sort of diplo speak for talking about the timeline here, because as you have noted there in the introduction to the show, multiple sources familiar with the discussions tell NBC News that the Biden administration has conveyed very clearly to the Israeli government that they want to see this shift from the high-intensity phase, the sort of constant bombing phase in Gaza of the operation, to more precise, more targeted military operations going after specifically Hamas commanders, Hamas fighters, et cetera, in Gaza. And the reason for that, of course, part of the reason for that, it's driven by what we are seeing in Gaza, this humanitarian crisis that is getting worse by the day. It is so bad that aid organizations, frankly, are having a tough time coming up with new ways to describe it. Like, how many times can they say living hell, right? Like, that's what we have heard, and that's what we have seen repeatedly from these aid organizations that are hoping to help get food and water and medicine to the people who need it. So that is the sort of context for this discussion on timeline, and that is why you are seeing some of this conversation happen now between the U.S., the Biden administration, and the the Israelis. Now, the Israelis say, listen, the defense minister came out just today here in Israel and said this war, we should be prepared for it to last for several more months. The question is, what does it actually look like, right? Is that a targeted phase of the war? Is that the bombing that we've seen? The President Biden himself called indiscriminate bombing earlier in the week. The last thing I'll say is this, because it is another layer to this. We are getting some new reporting here at NBC News, according to multiple sources familiar, that nearly half of what is being dropped in Gaza, 40 to 45% of those bombs, are so-called dumb bombs or unguided munitions. They just are simply not as precise as the guided kind, which are more expensive. So, again, it is all sort of laying out the stakes and the situation and the landscape here in Israel tonight. Yasmin.
Hal, we talked about these record number of attacks that are happening in the West Bank as well as we're talking about Gaza. You know, this is also happening in the West Bank. Talk us through what more we are learning on that.
60-hour IDF operation, roughly, according to the Israeli military. They say multiple people were killed here in the West Bank in this operation in Jenin over the course of really the last, I guess, almost 3 days here. This has been something that we have been watching here in Israel because, as you know, so much attention has been on the south of Israel, on Gaza, on what's happening there. But there are other areas that people have been watching for weeks, holding their breath in a way, wondering, is this going to be the flame that sparks some kind of broader regional conflagration here? So if you look at this map, you see where the West Bank is there. You see where Jenin is to the north. You see above that, right, Lebanon is the next country to the north where Hezbollah is, and concerns about what could happen on the northern border. Could that explode? This is a topic that, and I'm just looking at this readout here again, came up again with Jake Sullivan expressing that U.S. leaders want to make sure that there is not some sort of broader regional conflict here that comes out of this war with Hamas, Yasmin.
Yeah, and that has been the overarching fear throughout this entire conflict so far, and obviously threats coming both from Hezbollah as well as Iran in its proxy wars as well. Hallie Jackson-Forrest, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to see you back here later on this hour for more of your coverage on the Israel-Hamas war. Thank you, my friend. Megan, want to go to you from here on the situation in Europe. Tell us more about why these suspected Hamas operatives were arrested.
Well, so this is what we know. Officials in Denmark say that 3 people were arrested there, 1 in the Netherlands, and the prime minister is calling this situation as serious as it gets. Now, in Germany, state prosecutors there say 4 suspected members of Hamas have been arrested, 1 in the Netherlands, 3 in Berlin. German prosecutors are saying that one of the members arrested was searching for an underground stash of weapons in Europe. They believe those weapons were intended to be taken to Berlin to then be used in a potential terrorist attack against Jewish institutions in Europe. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office releasing a statement today. I want to read part of it for you. It says Hamas strives to expand its operational capabilities around the world and in Europe in particular in order to realize its ambitions to hit Israeli, Jewish, and Western targets at any cost. We strengthen our partners in the intelligence and security bodies in Denmark for successful countermeasures that culminated today with the realization of the arrest and the extensive exposure of Hamas infrastructures on European soil. Now, of course, this is a developing story, Yasmin, that we continue to stay on top of.
Megan Fitzgerald-Forrest, thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. Want to go to Russia now, where Russian President Vladimir Putin is appearing defiant, saying there will be no peace in Ukraine until Russia achieves its military goals as part of his annual marathon news conference in Moscow that he notably canceled last year because of the war. And now Putin is raising more questions about where fighting could go next, almost 2 years into this war. It's happening as he claims that Russia and the United States, they're making progress in talks to get jailed Americans Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich out. Want to bring in Keir Simmons in Moscow. Keir, if you will, let's talk first about the significance of Putin's defiance here and what more he's saying about where Russia is going to take this fighting in Ukraine next.
Well, we don't know where Russia's going to take this fight in Ukraine next, Jasmine, because ultimately, you're right. I mean, Putin was defiant, uncompromising, unapologetic, determined not to withdraw. But what he wants to do and what he's able to do obviously aren't the same. And what he's going to do is going to be really difficult to tell. I mean, what he says is that his goals have not changed one iota since almost 2 years ago when he launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, what he calls his special military operation. He says that he still wants to see the demilitarization of Ukraine. Okay, that means no Western involvement. You can imagine kind of the Ukraine being neutral, and we're so far past that, aren't we? And I think the way to sum this up really is that President Putin says that he's interested in talks, he's prepared to talk, doesn't trust the West, but okay, talks would be fine. But what are the two sides going to talk about? Because we know, of course, that President Zelensky is just as determined that Russia will be pushed back to the 2014 internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. I think ultimately what we saw today, this defiance from President Putin, was also a message that the fighting is likely to continue for some time to come.
So as we're putting the war kind of in a bucket here as well, we're also talking about obviously the Americans that are still being held captive in Moscow, in Russia, in which Russian President Vladimir Putin referred to briefly. What do we know? Are there ongoing conversations? Are there ongoing negotiations? Where are we on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we know there are ongoing talks because we've been told that effectively by the Americans that they made an offer and they say it was rejected. And now today we were told directly by President Putin himself that he's prepared to talk. What he was asked by a New York Times reporter, a pretty brave question, honestly, was whether it is true that that an offer was made by the US and that it was rejected by Russia. He denied that. But at the same time said we have to come to an agreement that suits both sides. And the trouble here is we don't know what offer was made by the Americans, and we don't know what demands are being made by the Russians. So where are we? Well, with Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter who is accused of espionage, completely denies it, so does his newspaper. And with Paul Whelan, convicted of espionage and again utterly denies it. With both of them, perhaps there's a possibility of some kind of a trade. Perhaps the Russians are asking for more than that. Clearly, there are talks taking place, but it doesn't mean. I mean, it's hopeful for their families, but it doesn't mean that we're going to see a result anytime soon.
Keir Simmons for us. Thank you, Keir. Appreciate it. All right, the Dow set another record today, ending the trading day at more than 150 points with a second straight day of gains thanks to strong economic news. I know everyone is going to want to hear this. Mortgage rates, they're now under 7% for the first time since August, steadily dropping for 7 weeks straight. And while you may not be in the market for a new house this holiday season, easing mortgage rates, they're a good thing. And then shoppers are leaning into this holiday season. They're buying more. Retail sales are up in November, 0.3%, turning around an October decline and exceeding economists' expectations. This good economic news, it's coming as inflation is easing. The Fed decision to hold interest rates and the expectation of rate drops next year. Brian Chung is joining us now with more on this. This all goes back to inflation. Why was this happening? To slow inflation. And it's happened, right? Because inflation is now hovering around 3%. When was the highest inflation? And is this how economists predicted it would happen?
It was June 2022, 9.1%. We've gotten it to 3% as of the reading that we got last week. And for what it's worth, economists at the beginning of this year, they would have told you, okay, yeah, if we can get to a 3% inflation rate by the end of this year, it might cost us the unemployment rate rising as the Fed deliberately slows the economy. And that hasn't happened either. We've got inflation coming down. Unemployment rate is essentially near over 50-year lows, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7%. It's been hovering around. That tells you that the economy, at least as of now, is not in a recession. That's the reason why the Federal Reserve, which has been raising rates, has decided to kind of pause right now and then even potentially look towards next year to begin slowly cutting rates to just kind of ease back down as they try to land this plane here.
So there's the numbers and then there's the feels.
Right.
And the feels still aren't lining up with the numbers.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, you look at polling and Americans are saying, well, the economy is the biggest issue for me. It's because they're looking at prices at the store continuing to go up. We have to remember that even though the rate of inflation is going down,
still going up.
It's still going up, just at a slower rate than it was in the summer of last year. But for Americans, Americans, they're also wondering, well, I mean, my wages hadn't kept up for about 2 years during this post-pandemic period with the rate of inflation. That only recently has started to invert. So basically in the summer or so of this year is when wage growth finally, for the first time in about 2 years, started to outpace inflation. It might take time, though, for Americans to feel and recognize it.
Why do you think the Fed is going to be so aggressive with rate cuts over the next year or so?
Yeah,
3 rate cuts, right, over the next year?
Yeah. And it's because they've raised interest rates so high. So even though 3 interest rate cuts may have been more than what the market projected, it's still going to keep that interest rate, even post-cut, at a level that some economists would say would be still historically high.
Brian Chung, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, right now, everybody, the decision over how much money Rudy Giuliani is going to have to pay for defamatory statements he made about 2 Georgia poll workers after the 2020 election is in the hands of a jury, which has gone home tonight without a verdict. And with millions of dollars at stake, Giuliani and his team decided the former mayor would not testify on his own behalf today. That decision coming after Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss, provided emotional testimony about how the lies spread by Giuliani damaged their reputations and upended their lives. Moss sang under oath this: "I now am very anxious. I have these nonstop anxious sweats. I have a lot of dark moments. I no longer go out. I will not be caught out anywhere alone, ever." Attorneys for Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss urged the jury today to award the women a minimum of $24 million each for Giuliani's defamatory statements. Lawyers for Giuliani said the amount should be much less. All right, tonight, Florida is bracing for a tropical-like storm to slam the state before moving up the entire eastern seaboard this weekend, bringing lots and lots and lots of rain. And you know what comes with rain? Flooding. And for now, the storm is already creating some concerns in Florida today. There's a high risk of rip currents. People at beaches told to swim near lifeguards. There's also dangerous marine conditions, especially for smaller boats in these major waves. Plus, you got strong winds, could bring down some trees as well. You got boardwalks just empty and so windy, blowing palm trees, leaves sideways. It's all putting a wrench in people's holiday plan.
This is wild.
He wasn't liking the sand pelting him, but we're going to get through it. We're headed back now.
I've been saying for 3 days, this is going to flood.
All right, want to bring in meteorologist Bill Cairns to talk more about this. By the way, if you were headed to Florida for the holiday, this is not what you were looking for, right, when it's freezing cold up here in the Northeast. So what are the expectations as we're taking a look at this path?
This is not going to be a storm that's going to, like, do a lot of damage. This isn't going to be like the tornadoes of last weekend, thankfully. This is just going to be a huge inconvenience. You know, people traveling, if you're trying to get your errands done, going to holiday parties. This is like an October storm, just a big rainy windstorm. And it shouldn't happen this time of year, but this is a very warm storm, and it's going to stay that way all the way through the holidays. So we have a little bit of rain now we're dealing with in the northern portion of the Keys around Key Largo. The light showers are popping up. It's very windy, too. It's not been enjoyable at all the last couple of days of the beaches. I mean, this is like tropical storm force, Gus. It's not going to do any damage. It's just you don't want to be out there. You get sand in your teeth from Fort Lauderdale northwards. As far as what we're going to look at as heavy rain, by the time we get to Friday afternoon, everything is dry about Miami northwards, and then it's Friday night and then all day Saturday. Watch all the heavy rain. That's the reds and the dark colors and the orange. That is the torrential downpours that are going to head throughout the state. That's 5 p.m. Saturday, so from Miami northwards. And then as we go throughout Saturday night, the storm moves right over the state, but notice how quickly on Sunday things do clear out pretty quickly. So as far as the rainfall totals go, we should be talking about 1 to 3 inches. Isolated areas, especially around Miami, have a chance for a little bit more, maybe 5 inches. Also our friends in Tallahassee, but I do not expect a lot of widespread flooding in Florida. So that's good. Inconvenience more than anything else.
So I like that. Sand in your teeth. That's what Floridians are going to be dealing with over the next couple of days.
Yeah,
what are we going to be dealing with up the East Coast?
All right, so this whole mess then, of course, has to go northwards, just like last weekend. But this one is moving very fast. So here we are, 1 p.m. Sunday. And I was just looking. I know a lot of people have interest in the football games this weekend, too. So it looks like in Cleveland, we could have some light rain for that game. The Panthers have a home game there in Charlotte, and it could pour and be windy. That'll be something to watch on TV. And then this whole mess, this is 1 p.m. Sunday. Then by 6 p.m., notice the rain moves into all areas here from Boston, central New York, and then the heavy stuff is in the Carolinas. And then I apologize for Monday morning for that morning commute and kids at the bus stops, because the I-95 corridor into New England, it is a cold, heavy rain with windy conditions. You know, if you want to call in sick on Monday, it's the time to do it.
Good news, Bill.
Yes, bad news, Bill. Come on, you had that.
That's why I said good news,
I
Bill.
know.
I was being sarcastic. Bill Cairns, thank you.
Good
Appreciate
seeing
it. Coming up, an urgent search tonight for a possible kidnapper stalking a college campus. How police in Arizona are stepping up patrols after at least 2 assaults targeting female students. Plus, a stunning rescue in the Dominican Republic. More on that later on in The Global. Tonight, the CEO of Southwest Airlines reassuring nervous customers ahead of what's projected to be a record holiday season for air travel. Listen to what he said on CNBC earlier today.
We are ready. We are ready for winter. We've already had snow, big snow in Denver, Chicago, and we performed extraordinarily well.
So why does he think Americans need some reassuring? Probably on account of the millions of passengers his company left stranded last December. You remember these scenes, people sleeping in airports for days, disappearing baggage, holidays ruined. When it was all over, Southwest had canceled nearly 17,000 flights and affected 2 million of its passengers. The airline initially blamed it on a massive winter storm that brought freezing temps and tons of snow to several parts of the country, but later admitted a lot of the chaos had to do with a super outdated scheduling system. Southwest is going to need to be ready this year. AAA projecting that the 2023 holiday season will be the busiest ever for air travel. NBC's Emily Ikeda is following this for us. They're making promises. They're ready. They're ready to go. Obviously, just playing the CEO's sound there. How are they going to keep this promise?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people are paying close attention to because we all remember the chaos from last year.
Yeah.
The CEO touting earlier today that you look at something like Thanksgiving of this year, they had snow in parts of the country, and he says that there were no cancellations system-wide. So he's touting that number earlier today. We know that airlines and airports, they have been preparing for months for this unprecedented travel season, this upcoming Christmas time. If you look at some of the specific changes that Southwest we have for you, their action plan, what they're calling it, improving winter operations. So that means like more weather equipment, think de-icing. They're adding more staff when there's extreme cold. Also something they called enhanced collaboration that deals with improving their scheduling systems, and then operational investments, upgrades to crew scheduling software, also increased phone system call capacity. Still, I just spoke with someone who says they're not taking any chances. They're going to be driving more than 20 hours to their destination. Take a listen here.
You're driving how long just to avoid flying?
23 hours. Because of a meltdown inside of an airline, you potentially lose, not only a vacation, but thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's not worth it. It's not worth the stress at the holidays.
So that's the degree of stress that he and his family faced last year.
It's really stressful to be left behind, to be stuck in an airport, to lose your baggages, to not know where you're going and when you're going to get there. So I understand it, but 23 hours, that is commitment there.
Commitment, yeah.
By the way, it's not just Southwest Airlines, it's other airlines as well, and it's other means of travel.
Yeah.
Right, so if you're heading out the door, you're getting ready to go on vacation for this holiday season, how do you prepare?
Yeah, so keep in mind the vast majority of travelers are actually getting behind the wheel. They're getting in the car. Take a look at some of the numbers here. More than 100 million people are going by car. They also have 7.5 million people expected to travel by air. That is a record, by the way, according to AAA. And then other people will take other modes of transportation, train, for instance, that 4 million people there. And then, so if you are one of the many, many tens of million people getting in the car, take a look. This is how much congestion can surge. More than 50%, Los Angeles to Bakersfield. Keep in mind, if you're among the travelers on the road, San Francisco to Sacramento, you can see an increase of 73% on the roadway. That's why we always say pack your patience. I know it's something we repeat often, but it's because you're going to be sitting in lines like this. But going back to the airline point, if you're going to be flying, a quick tip, download the airline's app because that's a really good way to get a faster mode of communication and if to quickly rebook your trip if there's a flight that's canceled.
And if you have kids, bring lots of snacks.
Entertainment.
Water, entertainment, games, load up those iPads, load up those iPhones that you have.
Yep, absolutely.
It's occupied. Emily Ikeda, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, want to get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a British teenager who disappeared 6 years ago has been found in southern France after a truck driver spotted him hitchhiking, according to police. The boy, Alex Batty, went missing when he was just 11 years old during a family trip to Spain. Police say his mother and grandfather are wanted in connection with his disappearance. Number 2, the University of Arizona is stepping up security after at least 2 women were accosted near campus this month, according to officials there. We don't know if it's the same person behind those incidents. Officials saying they're searching for a potential kidnapper. Number 3, a Navy officer has been transferred into American custody after being jailed in Japan for the past 2.5 years. Lieutenant Ridge Alconis pleaded guilty to negligent driving over a car crash that led to the death of 2 Japanese citizens. Prosecutors there say he fell asleep behind the wheel. Alconis' family today said they're encouraged by his transfer, but cannot celebrate until he's reunited with them. It is unclear if he has to spend more time in jail in the United States. At number 4, General Motors' self-driving business Cruise is laying off 24% of its workforce. It comes one day after 9 key leaders were let go over the company's response to an October incident where one of their self-driving cars dragged a pedestrian 20 feet. A Cruise spokesperson saying the company will focus on more deliberate commercialization plans. And then number 5, the NBA suspended Golden State Warriors forward Draymond Green after he swung and hit a Phoenix Suns player in the face. The suspension starts immediately, and Green will be required to meet certain league and team conditions before being allowed to return. Green has apologized, saying he did not mean to hit another player. When we come back, why the Pope is calling for an international treaty to regulate AI. Plus, we're going back overseas with Hallie for a rare on-camera sit-down with our reporters on the ground in Israel, what they're saying about covering this war. Coming up next. All right, it's time to get the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. And tonight, our reporters on the ground in the Middle East, some of them since the Israel-Hamas war started, sitting down with each other in a rare on-camera meetup, giving us an inside look into what it looks like to cover this war. Hallie is back with us now from Israel. She spoke with Hala Garani and Raf Sanchez. Hallie. This is fascinating. A lot of folks don't necessarily know what goes into covering conflict zones like this, Hallie, so I'm so thankful that you got this inside look. Walk us through it.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. And you know this segment, right? It's something that we do a lot on the show. It's specifically a behind-the-scenes look. You said it, at how a story comes together. And so we thought, listen, we have these war correspondents who have been covering this now for months, who have covered a lot of various wars and a lot of various places here. And we thought, let's have a conversation to just look at what that's like, how we are trying to tell those stories and bring those stories to a wider audience.
It started off very intense. It's remained very intense. Yeah. It's been a human grind emotionally since the beginning. It started with a lot of human suffering up close that we could see, where we could go to these kibbutzim, we could meet the people who had lost loved ones, who had people kidnapped. And there's still so much suffering inside Israel, but now a lot of the suffering concentrated in Gaza. We're seeing it from afar.
I think the real challenge for us is to tell the Gaza story without being inside of Gaza unilaterally. So you can go on IDF embeds. You did 1 or 2 even, I think. But that's obviously imperfect in the sense that you have escorts with you all the time. At some point, I hope that we're going to be able to get in unilaterally, independently, and report, because the courageous teams on the ground who are sending us the material, without them, we couldn't tell any of the story. So at least we're getting something, but we're not getting as much of the picture as we'd like. And that's a huge challenge, because ultimately, especially TV reporting, all reporting, but TV reporting is about face-to-face access. Yeah. And you don't get the story the same way over Zoom. You just don't.
And it's even hard to do the Zooms, for example, because the comms have deteriorated so much there. So how are you communicating with people in Gaza? Explain that to an audience back home. Everybody's texting, everybody picks up the phone, and it's an instant connection. That's not the case here.
You hear from people so intermittently. They text you, you text them back straight away, and then it's 3 days of silence. And you wonder, are they still alive? What's happened to them? And the reality, and a lot of times, they can't get connection, you know? You have to be super aware that as much as you want to hear everything from these people, you know, they're trying to keep their families alive, they're trying to find food.
I mean, we're seeing that with the other hat that I wear back home in Washington, this daylight here, this distance between the U.S., this very obviously close and strong ally of Israel, and what they want to see in what's next from Gaza. You referenced other conflicts you've covered, Hallie. You've covered this region for decades. Explain that. What does feel different now than then?
Well, I think the extent of the damage, the displacement of 90% of the population. This is not a territory that is going to be habitable after this. It's already not habitable. When the war ends, and it will end, are the conditions that led to this conflict going to change?
One of the things that has struck me being here just for a very short period of time is how much the families of people who are still being held in captivity want to talk.
Yeah, it's so interesting. They feel like they need to humanize their loved ones. They don't want the world to forget about these now 135 or so people who are still in Gaza. But it's also just, it's somewhere for people to put their energy. They can't help their mothers, brothers, sisters who are inside Gaza. They can't go rescue them. What can they do? They can talk, and they can talk, and they can sit down with journalists, and they can answer painful questions.
The hardest thing for me to do as a journalist is speak to the family member of someone who's died. We're in kind of emergency, kind of ER room mode when we're covering the story, but then we have those quiet moments when we're actually screening the footage. And that sometimes you can really cry and break down, because this is the worst nightmare that any of us can imagine living through, and you are time and again asking it of someone else to share. And I worry about myself when I'm in autopilot and I don't cry. I worry about myself. I check myself. Like, why haven't I cried in 2 weeks? Many of my friends are foreign reporters and do the same job that I do. One of my well-known female correspondent friends said, I haven't cried yet, and it's been a month. And we kind of wonder what's going on.
Is there a story or an interview that you can't shake? Is there something that is the thing that you're thinking about in those quiet moments at night when you're not working?
There is a little boy who was kidnapped, was taken into Gaza. His name is Ohad Munder. He was 8 years old when he was kidnapped. He turned 9 in captivity. And we sat down with his cousin, and the cousin mentioned that Ohad's father was in agony, not knowing whether his son had his glasses or not, because this little boy can't see without his glasses. And the thought of this little kid in those tunnels, afraid, not able to see. And Ohad came out on one of the first days, and he had his glasses.
It's funny because it's sometimes the most random detail that reminds you of the humanity. Eventually, not you, but eventually I'm going to go to the airport, I'm going to hop on a flight, and I'm going to go to my family, and it's going to be Christmas, and we're going to, have a nice meal and whatever. And you're going to feel this tremendous guilt that you left and the people behind remained. And that's something very difficult to explain. My brain is in the suffering of the people, and I feel guilty.
You're here, you're based here, and so when October 7th happened, you were what, at home asleep?
I was at home asleep, woke up, there's the dull thuds of rockets overhead, there's the sirens going off. I texted 2 of our bosses and I said, hey, sorry for the early morning text. There's what looks like a surprise attack, and we got to this checkpoint on one of the main highways. If you imagine I-95 or something, and there's just soldiers improvising a checkpoint using their cars. So we set up and we started doing our first live shots from one of these checkpoints, and the soldiers were so amped, they were so panicked, I would say, and they were dragging anyone who looked Palestinian out of their cars and putting them on the road. And I really thought, someone is going to get killed here in the back of our live shot. This might play out on, we were doing specials. We interrupted this program, and I just thought anything could happen here. And it was totally out of control then, and it stayed totally out of control for a long time after that.
The core of our audience at NBC News is based in the United States. How do you think about that as you're out reporting your stories through the course of the stories that you're telling?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, right? Thousands of miles away, 7 time zones, completely different context. But you do try to think about people in the U.S. and what are the reference points that are going to make sense, what needs to be explained, what's self-evident. The humanity kind of gets you through. There's a woman who's still in Gaza. She's called Noa Argamani, and everyone, even if they don't know her name, they'll know her face. She's the woman who was on the back of the motorcycle being taken away from the festival. We interviewed her father pretty early in the war. He's speaking in Hebrew, and he's speaking. and you don't need any subtitles. You know exactly what this man is saying. His daughter has just been kidnapped. It's the same when there's a mother in Gaza who is sifting with her bare hands through the rubble, trying to find her daughter's notebook because her daughter was killed in an Israeli airstrike, and the notebook is the only thing she can think of, you know, that's sort of a reminder of her daughter's short life. That stuff cuts through.
Raf and Hala just doing such incredible work here along with the rest of our team, Richard Engel and others who've been covering this story. And obviously, Yasmin, the focus is so much beyond us. It's what the story is. It's what we're covering here, which is this war now. But given that people who watch this show know that we do this segment with other correspondents, I think you've done it with us, we thought it was an opportunity to share some of those just sort of incredibly compelling moments from those two. And we're just so grateful to them for giving up a piece of their day, a short piece of their day to talk to us.
Oh, my gosh, that was so good. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily have insight into what goes into conflict reporting like that and kind of what goes through all of our heads when we're having to report on those things and what you face. One of the things that really resonated with me was in talking about, and I'm sure for you, Hallie, as well, because, you know, you're a parachuter, right? You're here mostly, but you parachuted in for a few weeks, and then you're going to leave, and you're going to go back to your beautiful family and celebrate the holidays with them, which I know you're very excited to do. But kind of knowing what you're leaving behind and what people in both Israel and Gaza face in this never-ending, what seems to be never-ending war.
And it's a particularly poignant time because think about what's happening right now here in Israel. I mean, everywhere. It's Hanukkah. Christmas is coming up, and you hear that invoked, right? You hear this moment that is supposed to be a celebration of family and friends and life and peace and miracles come up as we talk about, you know, what's happening with these hostage families, the people whose loved ones have been held captive by Hamas. It comes up when you're looking at the situation and you're talking to people about what's happening in Gaza here. And I just think about there's a woman who was at the White House just recently back home in Washington whose loved one is being believed to be held, still unaccounted for. And she talked about wanting a Christmas miracle, sort of hoping and praying for a Christmas miracle here. So the time too, it's a somber time for obvious reasons. And I think there is a real desire, especially when it comes to, for example, those hostage family members, a desperation to get something done. And I think when you look at what's happening in Gaza, absolute despair that there's not more from what we hear from people there that's being done for them too. Yasmin.
Hallie, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so NBC covers hundreds of other international stories each day, and because it's tough to read, to watch, or to listen to all of them, our teams have done it for you. Here are some things that they're keeping an eye on in a segment that we call The Global. On the island of St. Vincent, the leaders of Venezuela and neighboring Guyana meeting today as border tensions between those countries are rising. It's coming after Venezuela voted to claim part of Guyana that's recently been found to contain a huge amount of oil and minerals. During their meeting, Guyana's president said both sides are committed to solving the dispute peacefully. Off the Dominican Republic, the U.S. Coast Guard in a Carnival cruise ship rescued 12 people after their boat sank in bad weather. The cruise ship saved 6 people who were on a raft, and the Coast Guard picked up 6 others who were clinging to debris from their sunken boat. The Coast Guard says all of them are in good health. In the Vatican, Pope Francis is calling for an international treaty to regulate artificial intelligence. He says algorithms should be allowed to replace human values. The Pope has himself been the subject of AI controversy after computer-generated images of him in a Balenciaga-style outfit tricked some on the internet earlier on this year. All right, just in the last couple of minutes, everybody, baseball fans are getting to see history being made as generational talent and earner of the largest contract in sports history. Shohei Ohtani was officially introduced as a Los Angeles Dodger. Here's what he had to say through his translator.
I can't wait to join the Dodgers. They share the same passion as me. They have a vision and a history all about winning, and I share the same values, so just can't wait to join the team and get it going.
So hundreds of members of the media, Dodgers staff, family, friends at Dodger Stadium for the event, the biggest media spectacle baseball's had for a while. And you've probably heard why. A record-breaking, get the $700 million contract only made more unbelievable by the news a few days ago that Ohtani will defer almost all of it, everything, but $2 million per year until the contract is up 10 years from now. And NBC's Dana Griffin is following the story for us from Los Angeles. It has happened. We just heard from him. Tell us what else we heard.
I mean, talk about the media spectacle. He looked out into the audience at one point and said, hey, I thought just the media was going to be here. That was just the media. There were rows and rows of chairs. And, you know, we got to see him put on that Dodger jersey, his blue hat. And, you know, this is one of the most talented players in the history of the game. And the Dodgers talked pretty openly about their decision to hire him. He is a huge deal to this team because he's going to generate a lot of money. They made a point to say that they want baseball fans in Japan to convert to Dodger blue. And just knowing how close LA is to Japan, they're hoping to get people to flood the area, spend their money to see this star player. You know, he even, Shohei Ohtani even mentioned, you know, he's 29 years old. He talked about the fact that he doesn't know how much more time he has left to play. A lot of people, when it comes to professional sports, they're retiring by mid-30s. So he just had the Tommy John surgery, which was an elbow surgery. So he's going to likely start hitting next year, but he won't pitch until about 2025. So it's a major gamble to spend this much money on the player. We also heard from the president of baseball operations. Listen.
Shohei is arguably the most talented player who's ever played this game. He is a player that we have long admired, and since joining Major League Baseball, he has continued to improve and sharpen his talents en route to becoming the most dynamic player in the game.
And I think one of the most important things that we learned from this presser, people have wanted to know the name of his dog since he was named for the second time as MVP with the LA Angels. We learned the dog's name is Decoy, or Dokoping in Japanese.
There you go, mystery solved. So if you're an LA Dodgers fan, you're pretty psyched about this, right? You're going to be able to see him up close and personal.
Yeah.
If you've got deep pockets.
If you've got deep pockets, and it's going to cost you. So look at the numbers from from before we heard that Ohtani was coming to the Dodgers. Ticket prices were $190. They've now skyrocketed 133% to $442. That's the resale value. But the most expensive ticket, $9,628 if you want to be in the dugout club. So he is already generating so much money, so much buzz. There's a lot of excitement for this player coming to LA.
Start saving your money. Dana Griffin, thank you. Appreciate it. Coming up, everybody, you've heard about long COVID, but can the same thing happen with the flu? We're talking what a brand new study is saying about it. Coming up next. All right, a new study coming out literally in just the last few minutes is giving us a look at the long-term impacts the flu can have on our bodies. You've heard about long COVID, the lingering symptoms some people have to deal with for months, sometimes years after getting COVID. Something similar can happen with the seasonal flu as well. Researchers found that once someone had the flu, their risk for things like chest pain, elevated heart rate, type 1 diabetes, and some breathing and lung issues went up months after actually getting sick. The data is showing that hospital readmission and long-term impacts, though, are a lot more likely, and they're more serious when someone gets sick with COVID virus versus the flu. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now with more on this. Dr. Azar, as always, it's a pleasure to see you. Break down a little more for us how the flu can have long-term impacts on the body.
Yeah, Yasmin, so this was a really interesting study. It looked at tens of thousands of individuals who were hospitalized with COVID and compared them to individuals who were hospitalized with the flu. It should be noted that these were all veterans. They were all older men, again, who were sick enough to be hospitalized. And as you pointed out, they found that there were not similar rates, that there were higher rates of death as well as hospital readmission and multi-system organ involvement with COVID. But that didn't mean that individuals with flu were not spared from having lingering symptoms. And I think to all of us in the medical community, or many of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody, it's not new news to know that people can have lingering symptoms after, especially a respiratory infection like influenza, if it causes pneumonia. It can be actually quite serious for people for quite a long time.
There was actually, Dr. Azar, some research that came out a couple of months ago, I believe, out of the UK. It showed evidence of long colds as well. It seems like now we're starting to get a real understanding about conditions like chronic fatigue, for example, as well, that could have been triggered by these viral infections.
Yes, and again, I think this is something really important. I'd like for our viewers to understand that a concept of a post-viral syndrome is not new. That has existed for decades, if not centuries, if not for longer. And we sort of say colloquially chronic fatigue syndrome. The full name of that is actually something called myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome, or MECFS, which is a really debilitating post-viral fatigue syndrome that, again, because so many people were infected with coronavirus at the same time, now has a name, long COVID, given to it, but it's not a new entity. But of course, research now very much focused on the origins of this as well as treatments.
Still so much to learn there. Dr. Azar Forrest, thank you. Appreciate it. Still to come, everybody, millions of people shopping online this holiday season. And with that comes fake reviews. How you can spot scammers coming up next. All right, let me guess, everybody, you're doing some online shopping this season. You're probably doing it right now while you're watching. I do it all the time, multitasking. And since all of those options when you search at new toaster are a bit overwhelming, you've probably also looked at customer reviews to help you choose. One survey found 98% of U.S. read reviews before choosing a local business. But other researchers found fake reviews are a bigger problem than ever. So who do you trust? Well, in tonight's breakdown, we trust NBC's Noah Pransky for a few tips on how not to get fooled by fakes.
From stocking stuffers to the local restaurant around the corner, fake reviews are everywhere. Nearly half of every critique and rating you see online.
There are organized fraud rings out there that are trying to create fake reviews all the time.
Organized crime and fake reviews. Bet you didn't have those two items together on your holiday bingo card.
The scammers are just getting more and more sophisticated.
John Breo with the National Consumers League is sort of the Paul Revere of fake reviews, sounding alarms about bad actors illegally trying to boost sales of products and services, as well as those trying to illegally hurt a competitor's product or service. And yeah, the FTC considers posting a fake review illegal, and they're even planning to crack down on offenders next year. So how do you avoid this holiday season from getting suckered into a subpar subwoofer or sub sandwich? 5 tips. Number 1, don't just rely on star ratings. Read the text of reviews because some scammers don't take the time to add any. Especially read more of those nuanced 2, 3, and 4-star reviews. Number 2, check out the reviews on other sites too to see if you're getting the full picture. Even better, read product and restaurant reviews from established sources. Number 3, look for these red flags in online reviews. Lots of reviews published in a very short amount of time, lots of reviews published for a very new product, lots of short 1 or 2 word reviews, or lots of users posting with little history of posting anything else. Tip 4, and this is a big one, bookmark a review checker. These are sites where you can plug in the URL of an item you might be purchasing, and they'll analyze hundreds, even thousands of reviews to tell you if what you're looking at is likely real. And tip number 5, you probably shouldn't trust anything you see from an influencer online. There's a good chance that testimonial is bought and paid for.
Be especially wary of reviews you see on social media. It really is the Wild West when it comes to those reviews. Nobody is really monitoring them with any degree of security, so take those with a grain of salt.
Online reviews are still a great way to find great products, and hopefully now you can better cut through the clutter to avoid that next holiday disappointment.
And Noah is joining us now. Noah, what is an online retailer's responsibility when it comes to these fake reviews?
Thanks to Section 230 of the federal code, there is no responsibility basically whatsoever. You're not responsible for what a user posts on your site, but the integrity in the ratings is kind of integral to the Amazon, Walmart, this retail business. So Amazon, for instance, told us they remove hundreds of millions of fake reviews a year. They use technology and AI to sort them out. But it's kind of whack-a-mole, you know, you knock a few of them out of there, a few more pop up. They're doing the best they can, but at the end of the day, some of it does fall on us too.
Noah Pransky, thank you. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.